Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Eric Zinger. I'm the president of the Hartsdale Neighbors Association. Thank you for joining us. Our featured guest and speaker tonight is Edye McCarthy, Town of Greenburgh Assessor. The focus for tonight is going to be obviously talking about the 2022 assessments, the assessment grievance process, and all of that. We're going to run through a lot of the background, a lot of the details, all things about grieving your assessment. Really going to try and keep it high level and not focus on any individual circumstances or things like that. But at the end, if we have time, we'll definitely hopefully have some questions from the audience. So just a reminder before I kick it off, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the Hartsdale Neighbors Association YouTube page, and it's being streamed on Facebook. You'll be able to watch it there. So if you do need to step out or you can't stay for the whole time, you'll obviously be able to watch it later on. For those of you who don't know, Hartsdale Neighbors Association is a civic association based out of Hartsdale, where we work to advocate and advance on behalf of Hartsdale resident interests. Hartsdale itself, obviously, is a fire district, a zip code, and a station, a train station, but we primarily focus on Hartsdale Fire District, Greenburgh Central School District, and Town of Greenburgh related issues. So if you don't follow us on Facebook, encourage you to go ahead and make sure to like us there to make sure you're getting our updates, and that's facebook.com/Hartsdale Neighbors, or just Google Hartsdale Neighbors. And if you don't get our emails, make sure to go to hartsdaleneighbors.org and you can sign up there. You can also just send an email to info@hartsdaleneighbors.org. If you ever have any questions, there's anything that you want to ask about, you're not sure about, you want to publicize, whether there's a local event or something like that, please feel free to email us at info@hartsdaleneighbors.org. Check out our website, sign up for our emails there. Lots of important information. We host lots of webinars. We used to do in-person meetings before COVID. Hopefully at some point we'll maybe get back to those, but we've done a number of Zoom sessions and we found that people really enjoy them. So with that, I'm going to kick off the actual agenda for this evening and welcome Edye McCarthy, Town Assessor. She was kind enough to do one of these sessions for us last year. We got a lot of positive feedback about it, and so we decided that it would be worthwhile to do again this year. So welcome, Edye. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I want to start, obviously, everyone has probably, who's attending this meeting or watching this, has received their recent assessment notice. Many of them probably saw an assessment increase. Talk to us just a little bit in general about what happens every June with the assessment rolls and what's happening this year in 2022.
Okay, thank you again for having me. And at the end, if I don't get a chance to answer all of your questions, I work at Town Hall. The number is 989-1520, 914-989-1520. This is our very busy time, so if I don't get back to you, I apologize. I will definitely give me a day or two. So let's talk about the assessments and what has been happening. The town, as most of you know, because you've lived here, we went through a revaluation in 2016 for the first time in approximately 60 years. When at the time I was out speaking to civic associations and I had indicated that it had been 60 years, that's correct, 60, and it was going to take us some time to get everything back to a level playing field. It wasn't going to happen the first time around. So that was in 2016. I thought it went pretty well. And we had just done an update in 2021, again, a full revaluation. And every year in between 2016 and 2017 through 2020, all we were doing was changing assessments, increase or decrease, based on any improvements that were done to your properties, and also reflecting what's happening in the market. And that's called a trend. So as assessors, we don't set the market, we reflect it. So we take the sale prices and we look at them and we watch and see what's happening with the market. And as everybody knows, right now, the market is crazy. So every year since 2016, you have received, or you should have received, an assessment change notice from my department with my signature on it. Don't shoot the messenger, please. And that shows you what your last year's assessment was, and then this year's assessment. So this year, these dates are critical. And I hear a lot of complaints about people don't have enough time to prepare to come in and speak with us or even file a formal petition. Again, these dates are critical. Every year on June 1st, the assessment roll with the new assessment figures are published. They are published on our website. They're published in the newspaper that you can go on our website. You can come into town hall, whatever you need to do, they are available on June 1st. That's New York State law. In order to determine what those values are as on June 1st, we are state mandated to use a period of time to determine. That period of time, again, critical, is July 1 of 2020 to June 30th of 2021. So any sales that have occurred within that window are the sales that we by law and you by law are permitted to use to make a determination of whether you feel your assessment is correct. I want to
It's an important note. So that means we're valuing not your property, what it's worth today, right now, but as of, I think it's June 1st, 2021, right?
The valuation date that I'm valuing your property is July 1 of 2021. So let's just say real quick, for an example, if you had a piece of vacant land on July 1st of 2021, and you have a house built today, I look at that house today and value it as if it were July 1 of 2021. Again, please don't shoot the messenger. I don't make these laws. The New York State Legislature does. I'm just following them. So those dates that I gave you are key. Let's fast forward the story for a minute and let's get to June 1st of 2023. You have all the time in the world to prepare to see if that assessment is correct or not, because the period of time for next year is July 1 of 21 until June 30th of 22. You can start preparing right now.
That's an important point. I think for all the people who are saying, I feel rushed, I'm not ready to do this next year, you know that next year it's going to be June 1st. So put a calendar reminder in May 1st of 2023, start, thinking about it, or maybe you want to get your own assessment or anything like that. You know that next year's rolls are coming out on June 1st, 2023. So if you're saying to yourself, this is all good information, but I don't think I'm going to be able to move quick enough within the existing timelines, you know when this is happening again next year, and you can put a reminder in now to remind yourself April 1st, May 1st, that it's coming again, because the rolls come out every single year. So sorry, do you just want...
No, Eric, that was great. Thank you. I already said it once, regardless, you receive a letter from this office every single year, the first week in June, regardless of whether your assessment went up or went down or stayed the same. During the pandemic, I can probably get in trouble with this, so I hope nobody from the state is listening to this conversation, but I did not trend during the pandemic. We were going through such turmoil in the whole world that when you received my notices in June, you either if you got an assessment increase, it was because you had done some work to your property, but there was no trend that was applied because the whole world was upside down at the time. So now we're in a position where you see last year, this year, we'll talk about next year in a minute, but you see some big increases in your assessed values. So I'd like to talk about that for a minute, because that's what's happening in the market. We test the market. We, being the assessment department, we test the market, which means we look at all the sales that have occurred in every neighborhood, in every village, in every unincorporated area, in every hamlet, within every school district. We look at the sales, and that's how we make a determination. Just as if you guys have or have had mortgages, you've had an appraisal done on your property. The difference between that appraisal and the appraisal that I do is that appraisal is done on a one-by-one basis, one property at a time. I am valuing 18,000 residential homes in a very short period of time. So we use a computer-aided mass appraisal model, and that's how we determine. One of my lines when I talk with taxpayers is the fact, and the reality of it is that not all properties fit into the model. So that being the case, the model is an excellent model and it's up to date and it's current. But again, there are some oddities out there. If something happened to your house and it was something catastrophic and the condition, something negative happened or something positive happened, I may not capture that. The model may not capture that. So that's why my office, I recognize some of the names that are on the screen. I've spoken to you, I've seen you, I've met with you. I'm available. We have a great staff in the assessment department. I have to brag. I think we have the best in the town of Greenburgh, but we're here to help you. We're here to, at least, we may not make you happy. Well, paying property taxes doesn't make anybody happy, but my goal at the end of the day is to make your assessment as fair and equitable as possible. But more important, my goal is for you to understand the process. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Edie. So let's talk. I know a lot of the people here are probably thinking to themselves, I want to challenge my assessment. What do I need to do? When do I need to do it by? And what are some of the important dates and information for people who are watching this right now who are saying, I don't think my assessment is fair. I want to challenge it.
Okay, good question. Excellent question. I'm going to start with, there is a New York State form that you must use to fill out in order to appeal your assessed value. That form is 4 pages. It's easy. It might be a little bit intimidating, but it's not. It's 4 pages. It will literally take you 10 minutes at the most. It frustrates me for the taxpayers, our constituents in the whole town, that hire tax representatives to do this work for them. Nobody knows your property better than you do. Nobody has that feeling better than you do. So I'm going to tell you when your paperwork is due, why it's due, and what additional paperwork is necessary. But these tax reps, it's not a requirement. It's not necessary to hire a lawyer or a tax representative. You can do this work yourself. And if you have a question about your assessment or want your assessment reviewed, we're here all year. We can talk about this all year and we can explain the process. These are the next comments I'm going to make are key dates. Your assessed value for the current year comes out June 1st of every year. That's the state law. On June 1st, you can go online on the Town of Greenburgh website and you can see what your new assessment is. On or around June 1st, a couple days before, a couple days after, you will be receiving a letter from me indicating what your assessment was last year and what your assessment, your tentative assessment is this year. Sorry, I just had a thought. I wanted to make a comment. All right. So it's on June 1st. You'll be receiving the letter or you can get the information. Key dates you have from June 1st to the 3rd Tuesday in June.
That's June 21st this year, right?
It's June 21st of
1 week from today.
This year, to make a decision as to whether you're going to file a formal complaint or not. It's unfortunate today's Tuesday and we are solidly booked. We might have 1 or 2 openings left to meet with taxpayers informally, but we start meeting informally with the taxpayers in April and May. So, and we go all the way through to June 20th or June 17th. I guess that's the Friday. We just opened it up. So it's June 20th this year. We're meeting with taxpayers and we're going through the process, and the information that we need for you to help us to get the assessment correct is a couple different things. Pictures speak 1,000 words. I don't know if I said that correctly, but you know what I mean. All right. So pictures, what does that mean? Your front of your house, your back of your house, your kitchen, your bathrooms, your basements, your attics. If you have something good that you want to show me, show me. You have something bad you want to show me, show me. Any amenities, porches, tennis courts, whatever else. That's what the amenities and the inventory that I'm talking about. Again, pictures are phenomenal. You want to write a letter to me explaining this, what you feel is wrong with your house or why you feel your assessment is not accurate, write it. I'll take anything you want to give me except your firstborn. I have my own. All right, that was funny. Come on.
If someone had done a recent appraisal of the property, would that be something they would want to include as well?
Yep, let me get through that. So that's what I'm asking for is photographs, a letter explaining your scenario. If you've had a recent appraisal on your property for whatever reason, we will take that. Please keep in mind the dates. If you're going to have an appraisal on your property, use the dates of the window that I gave you. So for this year, it's July 1 of 2020 to June 30th of 2021. Those are the key dates. So any appraisals, if you are a realtor or you know a realtor, that the appraisal will cost you money. So if you are a realtor or you know a realtor, you can ask them for a CMA. That is a current market analysis. Some of them might charge you, some of them do not. Can't speak for them, but that helps tremendously as well. Eric, is that good?
That's great. I think that's really important for everyone listening. You know, I know when I did it a long time ago, I hired someone. I didn't know at the time that that's really not necessary. If you want to hire someone, no one is dissuading you from hiring someone. If you feel more comfortable hiring someone, you should absolutely hire someone. But if you'd prefer to do it on your own, it's something that a lot of people do on their own without having to pay someone as well. So no one's saying you don't hire someone, but you're just saying that you don't need to. So I want to talk and pivot for a second, Edye, because that was the most important thing I think people wanted to hear. And now I want to talk a little bit quickly about the second most important. Go ahead.
Eric, I want to finish with one thing.
Go ahead.
Before we move. So I wanted to, for those of you
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Sorry, I think I was just having a little internet glitch there. Okay.
Okay, so I want to go back
please.
before we move on to something different.
Please.
Okay, so but prior to 2016, when you guys got your tax bills or even a receipt of your tax bill, on there, as it does today, it indicates the assessor's opinion of value. Prior to 2016, you had an assessed value that was technically 3% of market value. Who understood that? Nobody got that. If I wasn't in this business, I wouldn't understand it. So now, since 2016, we are now at 100% of market value. So when you get your tax bills, you will see your assessment is $1 million, your property value is $1 million. The town board has committed to maintain that 100% of market value, more for purposes of transparency than anything else. So that's the main reason why we are maintaining that 100%. And what I mean by that is just like you're taking a test in school and your teacher grades your test, and that's when you get your grade. New York State Department of Taxation and Finance oversees everything I do. They make sure I'm following the law. They make sure that my deadlines are met. They make sure the assessment roll is out by June 1st. They approve the trends that you receive in your assessment change notices. They approve that. So far, since 2016, the town of Greenburgh has received a grade of 100% every year since we did the reassessment, including this past year. So I want to let you know that we're not doing this in a bubble. We do our analysis in-house. Tyler Technologies does an analysis independent of us, and New York State Department of Taxation does it totally independent of us. And they've all been right there with the same numbers. And that's why we've received 100% grade every year since 2016. So before I go on, Eric, there's a couple questions in the chat. Can we go through those?
Sure. So the first question that I saw is, why is there a need to raise property tax? Do we have a shortfall in the budget? And this is an important thing that this is actually what I was going to address before, but this is a very important thing. I've explained it to a lot of people, and it's something it's hard to reconcile. I totally understand that, but assessment changes do not increase the total tax revenues collected by the town. The total tax revenues collected by the town are set by the budget, and the assessment changes, whether your property increases, decreases, increases more than average, has no impact on the total amount of taxes collected. The example I always like to use is a pie. The pie stays the same. Your individual proportion of the pie may change, and it may increase, it may decrease, and it may increase for certain municipalities and decrease for others. An example would be maybe your Hartsdale fire taxes increase, but your town taxes decrease because there's different pools of assessment that feed into both of those. So the assessment changes is, because I get it. A lot of people say, hey, my taxes are going up. My assessment is going up. And both of those things are true, but there's no causality there. If the town board decides that they need to vote to raise taxes for whatever reason they choose to, that's totally independent of anything that Edye does. And if Edye says, hey, in order to maintain our 100% equalization rate, I need to raise assessments, that's totally independent from what the town board does with their budget. So the next question, and this is an important distinction, this is a question we got from a lot of people, Edye, because a lot of people are saying, hey, future's not looking so good right now. Little worried about the future. What happens if housing prices decrease significantly in the future? Would that result in assessment decreases for people?
Absolutely. I'm not even going to let you finish that sentence. Absolutely. So again, every year there were pockets, not in the last 2 years, but there were pockets that didn't see any market changes, and there were pockets that did. This past year or whatever, all the residential, commercial, whatever, there were changes, but we track the market. And as I said at the beginning of this meeting, we reflect the market. Whatever that market is, we reflect it. Remember, we're a year behind. So when the market, oh, God's not listening to this, I don't want the market to tank. But if real estate starts going down in values, with the residential and the commercial, I'm going to send out assessment change notices that are going to reduce your assessments. That's the way that it goes. Like I said, I reflect the market. The market's going up, your assessment's going up. The market's going down, your assessment's going down.
Okay. You kind of touched on this, but I think it's an important question because, again, this is something that I hear repeatedly from people. Dennis asks, why are we doing this every year when the real estate market is volatile? So you mentioned previously we went for a long period of time before we did it. Why do we need to do it every year? I know you touched on it, but let's make sure just to call that out.
Okay. The reason why we're doing the reassessment every year is to make the assessments fair and equitable. They were not prior to 2016. They were all over the place. I'll give you the perfect example. And if you live in a house that I'm giving the example about, sorry, I apologize, preface that. So what happens is the assessment department is governed by rules, regulations, and procedures through New York State legislature, and also the court systems. The courts have determined, the New York State real property tax law has determined that assessments in non-reassessment municipalities can only be changed if there's a building permit taken out. That's it. I can reduce assessments based on sale. I can reduce assessments based on complaints. I can do all of that, but I cannot raise assessments unless there was a building permit taken out. Sometimes people do work and forget to take out building permits. So they improve their property, value, and their assessment doesn't change because there was no permit taken out. So everybody else in town has to subsidize that. And that's what had happened for 60 years prior to the first reassessment.
They forgot, obviously. They
They
didn't
forgot.
intentionally not do it at all.
I can't say that, so I'm going with they forgot. So there are still some people today that forget to take out the building permits, but we're in a much better position now. So if I see, for example, if I see a sale come through and I have it assessed at $500,000 and it sells for $1.5 million, not necessarily in this market, but something's not right. Our model is so good. It's not perfect, but it's really good. So if there's a discrepancy between $500,000 of assessment and $1.5 million sale price, something happened to that property. We're not off like that. So we'll go out, we'll do an inspection, and we'll take a look, and we'll find out that kitchen brand new, bathrooms brand new, basement finished, and it's not fair to all the other taxpayers. So what the reassessment did, and the every year trending, is it stops the subsidies from occurring. Everybody's paying what they should be paying based on their current market values. Again, like Eric said, I want to reiterate, the town, county, school, village, fire do not make any more money because of a reassessment. All the reassessment does every single year is apportion what taxes or who pays what. We don't get any more money. It's called a zero-sum game. I want to make a comment that back in 2016, there were 4 other municipalities that had extended periods of time about a reassessment. And so we all did it together in Westchester County. But I will tell you that approximately, I'm guessing when I say 80%, it might even be a little bit higher, municipalities in New York State, there's 1,000 of them, reassess on a regular basis. Some reassess every year, some reassess every 3 years, some reassess every 5 years. But regardless of that full reassessment, everybody trends every year to reflect the market. This is not new to us. In Westchester County, there's 247,000 parcels, and there is about 40% of those parcels that are at 100% of market value. So it's creeping up. A lot of politicians are afraid. I'm not talking politics, but a lot of politicians are afraid about losing the election if they do a reassessment. I thought ours went pretty well. So, but that's another reason.
Thanks, Edie. So Bill asks, and I think this is a good question because I think this is an example of someone who wants to challenge their assessment. You tell me what you think. He wrote, if many of the houses in your neighborhood have been renovated and flipped, increasing the trend for your neighborhood, but your house hasn't, why should your non-renovated house be subject to the same percentage increase?
Okay, I'm going to break that question. That was a really good question. I'm going to break it into 2 parts. All right. If I have a neighborhood with 10 homes, 8 of them have been renovated, brand new everything, right? The model will assume that all 10 homes are of the same condition. It is a taxpayer's responsibility. I beg you guys to pay attention. When we did our first reassessment, I was out at 65 public meetings. I beg you guys to pay attention because those 2 homes that did not renovate like the other 8, you're not fitting into the model. Come in and see me. You don't have to hire a rep. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Come in and see me. File a formal grievance application. Whatever the case may be, you're the extraordinary circumstance where you don't fit into the model. It's as simple as that. There's 18,000 residential properties in town, and there's 30,000 properties that I'm responsible for. So I can't walk into every single home every single year. It is your responsibility. This is me begging you to pay attention to your assessment.
That's the perfect example of someone who should challenge their assessment and wouldn't need to hire some, because here's the thing, guys, if it's obvious, right? If it makes sense, Yeah, I think everyone's getting the tone and tenor of Edie. I've known her a long time. She's incredibly reasonable. She's done this a long time. She has an incredible amount of knowledge. She's not looking to hurt anyone here. If it makes sense for your assessment to go down, you're not going to get any argument from her, right? I mean, so that's a great example of someone, if there's something unique about your property, let's say both of your neighbors renovated, if your property has something that isn't necessarily obvious that lowers the value, you're the person who should be watching this and who should make sure that they're challenging their assessment to make sure that you're not paying more than your fair share. And that's a perfect segue to a question that I got from someone who said, why should I challenge my assessment if I think it's unfair? And Edie, I'm going to take this one if you don't mind. Why should you challenge your assessment if you think it's unfair? Because if it's unfair and it's higher than it should be, that means you are paying an unfair portion of the property taxes. I went over and over again about how the overall size of the pie doesn't change and the overall revenue of the town doesn't change, but individual homeowners will see increases and decreases in their property taxes. And if your assessment is too high, you're paying too much and you should challenge it.
Okay,
So Edie,
may I
go ahead.
comment?
Yeah, please.
There are varying levels. Eric keeps using the word challenge. There are varying levels of challenging your assessment. Picking up the phone to ask me to take a look at your assessment anytime throughout the year, it's an informal conversation. That's all we need. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes between June 1st and June 21st, depending on our availability, we will meet with you. That's an informal challenge. So you have all year, you have between June 1st and June 21st to have an informal with the assessment department. And June 21st is the formal appeals date. On or before that day, you can file a grievance. You don't have to talk to me. I'm fine. You can go straight to the Board of Assessment Review and have them hear your case. You can submit your paperwork and they will just look at it and go through it. Or you can go meet with them in a public meeting on June 21st. That's your prerogative. But again, there's different levels of the word challenge.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That's a good point because people need to be aware of the dates and the different cutoffs and things like that. So that's a great point. So let's talk a little bit for a second about some of the overall trends, because some people may say, oh my God, my assessment went up 10%. You know, are my property taxes going to increase 10%? You know, can you tell me a little bit about the overall trends in Greenburgh, and then we'll maybe narrow that down a little bit as we go forward.
Okay, so what we need to be cognizant of here is that you live in, number one, you live in the unincorporated Greenburgh. Number two, Greenburgh school districts, right? Number three, what is it? Greenville Fire Department.
Hartsdale
right?
Fire Department.
Hartsdale? Okay, Hartsdale. Sorry about that. So if your assessment went up, say, for example, the average in the town is 8-9%, something like that. If your assessment went up 8% and everybody's assessment went up 8%, nobody's taxes are changing. Only reason that the taxes would change in that scenario, if everybody went up the 8%, is because the governing budgets change, which of course they do every year anyway. But, and I mean that with, I say the fire department, the school, and the town, and the county, of course. So again, if everybody's assessment goes up 8%, nobody's taxes should change if the budgets stay the same. If your assessment goes up 9%, where the average goes up 8%, you will see a slight increase in your taxes, very slight. And it depends on what happens in the entire town will be dependent on what happens to you, to your taxes. So you need to be aware of that. One of the things that I just said, I want to repeat it, because if everybody's assessment goes up 8% and you got a 12% increase in your assessment, your taxes are going to go up, but they are not. They're not going up the 12%. I need you, if you don't learn anything else tonight, I need you to learn the dates that I threw out at you and the fact that just because your assessment changed to that level, that doesn't mean your taxes are going up commensurate to that.
Yeah, because a lot of people, a lot of people got significant increases. And if you're curious about some of the overall trends in the town has published a heat map. It's on the town website under the Town of Assessors Department. I've linked to it in the chat here. And you can see that, if you saw for example, an 8% increase, that's not abnormal. That's a lot of people in your community probably saw the same increase, and relatively overall isn't very high. One so if you are curious about your neighborhood trends and things like that, check that out. One thing I think people are asking about a little bit is the difference between residential and commercials, and what the impact on that is in this most recent round.
Okay, I just want to stay with the assessments for one more minute, and then we'll talk about the difference. So the way that I structure this and the way that I like to talk to taxpayers so they have a better understanding, as opposed to me telling you about the 15 different tax rates we have, the way that I talk to taxpayers is that in your neighborhood, because it will vary by school district, it will vary by fire department, and it will vary by your sewer taxes. Your property taxes are on, or give or take, about 3% of the market value. So that's one gauge where you can see what's happening in the market. I get a lot of questions. Well, my neighbor's only paying half about what I'm paying, or the person down the street's only paying half. What you're looking at is their taxes, and that's after all exemptions. So maybe that person who's paying half next to you, maybe they have a senior exemption, maybe they have a star, maybe they have a veterans exemption, maybe they're a volunteer fireman. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons why people's taxes vary. What you need to look at, if you are looking at that, is the assessed value. So let me just take another minute, and I want to talk about the different property types in town. I think everybody here is single family homes. I'm going to safely assume that, but Eric's shaking his head no. So there's different methodologies that are used to determine values for assessment purposes. There's 3, and they're industry standard worldwide. The cost approach: how much does it cost to build your house, and how much does it cost for your land? You add the 2 together, you get your value. The income approach: it's based on the potential income that can be generated from that property and how much does it cost to operate. At the end of the day, you have X number of dollars, and you can capitalize that into value. The third, which most of us should be familiar with, is the market approach or comparable sales approach. That approach is what all residential, 99.9% of residential properties values are based on, is the market approach, because there's sales out there. So for your purposes, for your homes, I look at probably somewhere between 3 and 5 properties that have sold in order to determine what your assessment is. Fast forward that story. Now let's talk about commercial properties. All of the 99% of the commercial properties, can't say all, are based on the income approach. So if I own a building, a retail strip center on Central Avenue, I own that. I'm leasing that space out to tenants, to stores, right? I'm getting rent from those people. And then I calculate that rent. How much does it cost to operate that building? I need insurance. I need to manage it. I need to maintain the parking lot. I need to maintain the lights in the parking lot. That's expenses. So it's the income minus the expenses gets you, at the end of the day, a dollar amount, which we can capitalize into value. Again, 99% of commercial properties are valued that way. We don't typically use the cost approach in the town of Greenburgh unless there's an extraordinary property or there's something that doesn't have any comparables to it. Take a deep breath. Oh, wait, that was for me. Let's talk about condos for a minute. Condos, co-ops, and apartments by New York state law. Again, please don't shoot the messenger. they have to be valued using the income approach. Condos are typically owner occupied. So what I have to do is I have to go out to the market and I have to look at what's happening with the rentals in the apartment complexes. I take the rentals from apartment complexes, bless you, and I compare them, or I apply them to that condominium complex or that cooperative complex. I do not appraise individual condos or individual co-op units separately. By law, I have to appraise it as an aggregate. I come up with an aggregate value based on market information, what rents are going for, what expenses are being utilized or being accepted in the market, who's not paying rent, who's paying rent late. All of that is taken into consideration. And it's unfortunate that at the end of the day, condos and co-ops and apartments are getting what is known as a de facto exemption just because of the methodology. So there's somewhere around 60 or 70% of what actual single family homes are. So if your house is worth $1 million, you're going to be assessed at $1 million because that's the law. If a condominium unit is worth $1 million, they're probably going to be assessed somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000. It's a de facto exemption. The only way to change that is to get legislation, get the state legislature to change that. And to be perfectly honest with you, the New York State Assessors Association, which I'm past president of, has been trying that for 50 years, 45, I'll even give us, to no success, as you can tell. Fast forward that story. And just recently, there has been legislation that has passed both houses that any new condominiums, any new cooperatives, shovel in the ground, will be assessed based on market value. So now we have, I'm throwing this out there, now we have Four Corners, and they want to build a whole bunch of condos right there. Hypothetical, they want to build a whole bunch of condos. When they build their condos, when they sell their condos, if they sell them for $1 million, they're going to be assessed at $1 million. If they sell them for $500,000, they'll be assessed at $500,000. We are just waiting for the legislation to be delivered to the governor's office, and we're all hopeful that she's going to sign it. So that's where we're at. Going forward, we're in much better condition than we were for the past 50 years.
And for everyone who's watching this who is a condo owner, be aware a couple of things about this. Legislation is only for new condos. So if you are in an existing condo, nothing about this new legislation will change your specific circumstance. And it is pending to be signed by the governor. And it's interesting that there is also there's two bills. There's one that's Greenburgh specific, and there's one that would allow municipalities statewide to also adopt this. Both have been passed by both houses, or both the Assembly and the Senate, and are pending signature by the governor. Hartsdale Neighbor Association will definitely provide more information and more updates should either of those bills become law. So that is an important update. I think that's one of the things that people are confused about. They see condos and co-ops assessed at lower valuations. They want to know why. And I think, Edye, I think you did a really good job of explaining that. One question that came in on this topic just now from Harriet, she says, why are some townhouses taxed as single family homes and some as condos?
That's a great question. So thank you.
Actually, Harriet. It was me then. No, I'm kidding.
So that's a great question. So think about the house that you guys live in now. Some of you live in Tudors, some of you live in colonials, some of you live in ranches, some of you live in capes. That's a style. A townhouse is a style. For your home, you own it, what's known as fee simple. You own the entire thing. You own everything. You own the ground, you own the walls, you own inside, you own outside. It's known as fee simple ownership. A townhouse is a style. When properties are appraised as single-family homes, it's because they're sold or built as with fee simple interest, fee simple ownership. Condominiums don't own 100% of their land and their inside and their outside. So that's a condominium form of ownership. And that is the only one by law, condominiums and cooperatives, that are mandated for us to use that methodology. I hope that was
So it's about the ownership structure of the property, not necessarily the underlying style of the property. Theoretically, a community of single family homes could organize a ownership structure of condo and be taxed that way.
No, cannot.
Oh, okay.
In any other, that's a great point though. In any other jurisdiction, except maybe there's 3 out of the 1,000, Greenburgh being one of them, we passed legislation a couple years ago to say if you have a single family neighborhood and you want to convert it to condominium form of ownership, it doesn't matter whether you do or not. Because it was originally assessed as a single family home, it continues to be assessed as a single family home.
Sure our Dobbs Ferry residents. I'm sure our Dobbs Ferry residents are well aware of that specific situation.
Yes, they are.
For those who the landing had some taxation changes and attempts to change over the time. If you Google about that, you might be able to find some articles about it. But that's a really good point. So Harriet, you're saying Hunters Run versus Westwood and Irvington. Edie, I don't know if you're familiar. My guess is that one is owned fee simple and one is owned as a condo structure.
Hunters Run. Hunters Run, I think, is the townhouses.
Okay. And then versus Westwood?
Yeah, it's condo, I think.
It has to do with the ownership structure, not the style of the house. Okay, any other questions that people have? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat or anything that people haven't asked. We're going to go till about 8:30 if we still have more questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I'll bring you up, or you can paste it in the chat as well. Edie, why don't you give everyone those dates again one more time for when the formal grievance period ends and what you would need to do if you want to, reach out to the assessor's office about your assessment.
Okay, I want to talk one more thing and then I'll backtrack for a second. With these new assessments that you receive, the 2022, please keep in mind that will affect your property taxes starting in April of 2023. I know your school's bills come out in September. That's based on your 21 values. So the first impact that you will see is April of 2023. And going forward, we're a year behind there as well by New York State law.
Because this is the census assessments that came out just now are the tentative assessments. The final, when will the final assessment rolls come out?
So the final assessments are determined and will be published September 15th. So for example, if you file a petition, if you do not file a petition, the number that you see on that letter is going to be your final number. It's going to be the number that your taxes will be levied on. If you do file a petition, you will be notified in September of the Board of Assessment Review's determination. And then that assessment will be applied to the April tax billing. But I want to be strong and say that I know you guys have seen increases. Everybody has seen increases, but you can't just walk into our office and say a 12% increase is too much or a 10% increase is too much. Everybody else's property value went up, but mine did not. I need to have some backup. I need to have some proof on why you think that way and why you feel that way. Comparable sales are good, things like that. I can't just change it because, and it's unfortunate and it breaks my heart every day, but retired people and it's just a weird world we live in right now. I wish that I could, but I have to be as objective as possible. When I set assessments, I will tell you, and I'm doing this 34 years. I never, ever look at property owners' names, ever. I redact them from every analysis that I do because I don't want to know. I don't want to know who you are. If I know you, I don't want to know I know you. So I never put myself in that position. Just saying that. So let's go back. June 1st, the new assessments are published. They are based on July 1 of 2021 date. That's when I value them. And the period of time that you want to use your sales, if you're going to hire an appraiser or ask a realtor, is July 1 of 2020 to June 30th of 2021. That's the sales period. The roll comes out to be published June 1st. Grievance day is June 21st this year. It is always for the town of Greenburgh. So if you have other property or you have other friends, it varies by municipality. For the town of Greenburgh, it is always the third Tuesday in June.
That somebody wrote, if one files a complaint, how is it resolved? Will the town come to reassess the property? Sounds like the answer to that question is that you go before the Board of Assessment review and make your case.
You
Correct.
do not have to physically appear in front of the Board of Review, but you do have to supply supporting documentation for them, because if they open up the file and there's nothing in there, there's nothing for them to gauge. I know this might sound a little bit cocky, and I apologize for that, but by law, again, the assessor is deemed to be correct until proven otherwise. So it's up to you to supply the documentation. And again, there's varying levels of challenging your assessment. We're at a crunch time right now. We have a week left. Not sure if there's more time for my staff and I to meet with taxpayers, but the Board of Assessment Review looks at every single page that's submitted. So
here's a good question. If you buy a property in the town, will the assessment automatically reflect the sale price for that property in the appropriate year?
We do not reassess on sale. That is illegal. That's called welcome stranger. We do, however, put your sale price into the mix with the other 4 or 5 comparable properties that we look at. Industry indicates one sale does not make a market. So we look at 4 or 5 different ones. It may not be within the year of when you buy your property because of the timing, if you fall within that window or not. If you don't, then your sale will be applied to next year's valuation.
So this was another question that was asked, and I think you answered it, but this is the key thing that I think a lot of people here are watching. What factors, what is information that you can bring before yourself or the Board of Assessment Review that's going to be the most persuasive in discussing your assessment? I know you talked about pictures. Let's go over that just one more time briefly, because I think that's one of the key things people are looking to hear tonight.
That's huge. So again, any supporting documentation, will take anything you give but your firstborn. And what I mean by that is write a letter. You can write it in crayon. You don't have to type it. It doesn't have to be formal. Just write a letter explaining about your property, why you think your assessment is incorrect or inaccurate or whatever. Send photographs, get appraisals that cost you money, just saying, or get a current market analysis from a realtor. Anything and everything you think that would help the Board of Assessment Review or me or my staff make the determination as to the accuracy of your assessment will help you.
If I go in there and say it's not fair, it's too high, will that help?
Nope, will not help. Will not help. Because the first question I'm going to ask you is why. The second question I'm going to ask you is, what do you think your property is worth? If you were going to put it on the market, what do you think your property was worth? You can't say, I don't know, because then I don't know. So come up with something. You guys know, I'm sure you look at, I can't believe I'm saying this, but you look at Zillow and you look at LoopNet and you look at Realist, and there's all kinds of people.
Almost every day.
Yeah.
There's a comment about how the grievance period is only 7 days away, not much time. A reminder, guys, it's the same time of year every year. So if you're feeling like this year is too rushed, set a reminder, April 1st, 2023, May 1st, 2023, get ready for next year. Another question that we saw in the chat, Edye, I don't know how much you can go into this. So when we do that mass appraisal, can you elaborate on how areas are broken out? Say Poets Corner versus College Street. How do you group those neighborhoods together?
Okay. So it's called neighborhood delineation. And I'll give you the scenario on why we do that, and then I'll tell you how we do it. Why we do it is because if you live on Central Avenue on the east side and Central Avenue on the west side, same builder, same house, same day, pops it up, boom, right? So same style, same everything. Which one's more valuable? This side of Central or that side of Central? What house is more valuable? I'm going to answer because you guys are on mute. Those houses are valued exactly the same because they're the same builder, same house, same everything. What differs is the land. What differs is the location. So the first thing that we do in analyzing property values is we do something called neighborhood delineation. So the first thing that we do is we put all the properties in a big pot. That pot is the town of Greenburgh. We then break that pot out into the unincorporated area and the 6 villages. We then break that pot out into school districts because that's important. That will vary your value significantly. We then break that pot out. So now we have 5 pots, right? We then break that pot out into neighborhoods. So there's some neighborhoods that are in the same school district, that are in the same fire district, that are on the same side of the street, but this is an older part of the neighborhood and this is a younger part of the neighborhood. So we break it out. We break it out into 2 separate neighborhoods. And that's how it works. We did that initially in 2016. We tweaked it a little bit. We watched the sales, we tweaked it, and then we tweaked it again, and we tweaked it again. So we are constantly looking at that. When we first set it up, I met with a whole bunch of homeowners. I met with a whole bunch of realtors. I met with a whole bunch of brokers. I personally got input from everybody. I wanted everybody to tell me everything. Did we get it 100% correct? Absolutely not. Nobody's perfect. And add on top of that, the real estate market changes every day. So what we found, for example, this is kind of funny, in 2016, swimming pools, for example, regardless of the neighborhood that they were in, it really didn't add a lot of value to your property. So we didn't weight that very heavily, that amenity. COVID hits. Nobody's going out. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's going anywhere. You know what they're doing? Putting in swimming pools, whether they're above ground or below ground or whatever it is. Above ground pools are not taxable, by the way, but the decking around them is. Okay, because that's considered personal property, but the decking around them is. So the weight, the priority of those swimming pools changed. So that is maybe one of the shifts that you see in your assessment changes this year because you put a pool in last year. That would play into your value as well.
I think one of the interesting
every single year.
I think one of the interesting things you said too that a lot of people may not know is that you value the land and the home separately. And if you look on the assessment rolls, it will tell you the breakdown between just the land and the total value. I don't think it explicitly calls out the house amount, but you can, infer what the remaining amount is. So you can compare land pretty easly, and then also there's the house component as well.
However, if you are going to challenge it in any level of the challenge, you're only by law, again, sorry, I keep saying that, permitted to challenge the total assessment. You can't just challenge your land value. So maybe your land's a little bit too high and maybe your improvement's a little bit too low, but your total value is correct.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. I'm glad we got that. So look, I think this was really informative. I want to thank Edye for being with us tonight. Edye, why don't you tell everyone who may have learned something tonight, who wants to take some kind of action, how can they get in touch with your department tomorrow or in the coming days?
Call the office. Again, I'm not sure if there's any appointments that are available, but we are absolutely here to answer any questions that you have. I have a great staff. The number is 914-989-1520. And we're a little busy right now. So if the phone rings 5 or 6 times, don't worry, we'll eventually answer it. So just be a little patient with us.
Okay, everyone, I hope everyone found this informative. If you do not already follow Hartsdale Neighbors on Facebook, follow us at facebook.com/Hartsdale Neighbors. Check out hartsdaleneighbors.org. Sign up for our email list. I want to really thank Edye McCarthy for spending an hour with us tonight. Thank you so much, Edye. I know this is a busy time of year for you. Good luck with all of the coming grievances and assessments. And as you guys saw, Edye's been doing this for a long time in the town of Greenburgh. She's got a tremendous amount of knowledge about the situation. If she can help you lower your assessment, she absolutely wants to do that and wants to help people out. So if you have, go ahead.
If anybody is looking for an increase, please call me too.
Don't hold your breath. But thank you all for watching tonight. If you think that someone else would find this helpful, please point them to our website. It'll be on, the video is there to watch. You can go back and call it up at different points. I'll be putting it on YouTube as well, and encourage you guys to share it with anyone in the town of Greenburgh. So thank you very much again, Edie, tonight for joining us, and everyone else for being here. And really appreciate it. If there's something that you want to let the Hartsdale Neighbors Association know about, or you're interested in learning more about, please contact info@hartsdaleneighbors.org. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.